In her pursuit of beauty, a California mom makes a deadly decision.
She chose her appearance over her sons.
But when the case went before a jury, their verdict shocked everyone.
We feel that further deliberation would be pointless. Is that accurate?
This is Inside the Crime, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. Before we get into this case, there's a reason Law&Crime is the go-to spot for true crime content. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They have more than 1,000 attorneys and have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. And in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/insidethecrime. Click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. Look, there's nothing wrong with getting a little cosmetic enhancement or a nip and tuck, unless that decision places your children in danger or exposes them to potentially fatal risks. It's June 29, 2025. We're in Bakersfield, California. It's just before 4:45 in the afternoon when officers are dispatched to the always beautiful med spa. When they arrived on scene, officers quickly learned that 2-year-old Mateo Gutierrez and his 1-year-old brother Emilio had been left unattended in their mom's car for more than 2 hours. Investigators spoke with Emilio's mom, Maya Hernandez, to find out what happened and why she would leave her 2 young children in a car unattended on a hot summer afternoon. The 20-year-old reportedly told investigators that she was at the med spa for a cosmetic procedure. Initially, police said it was an appointment to get lip filler. Maya told investigators she arrived to the med spa around 2 that afternoon. Then she went inside, saying she left her 2 sons in their car seats with crackers, milk, candy, and her phone propped up so they could watch TV. So she seemed to think nothing terrible would happen because Maya left the air conditioner on in her 2022 Toyota Corolla. But here's the thing. Officers learned her car automatically shuts off after an hour of inactivity. Officials say the outside temperature reached 101 degrees while Maya was at her appointment. Officials say that type of heat can raise the temperature inside the car to 143 degrees. According to the Bakersfield PD offense report, Maya was told she could bring her children into the waiting room, but she reportedly was concerned about how long the procedure would take. During that long stretch of time from 2 to 4:30, investigators say she didn't check on her kids. Maya said she left the med spa around 4:30. She noticed one of her children seizing, foam coming out of his mouth, and he was shaking. Maya said she performed CPR, then called police. Officers noted the front passenger side window was rolled down. When the officer placed his arm in the window, Maya's son was warm to touch. The offense report says Maya Hernandez admitted that she knew it was irresponsible to leave her kids in the car, and she thought about it when she got out of the car, but had no justification as to why she left them anyway. After being treated in the hospital, Maya's 2-year-old son Mateo was placed in protective custody, while 1-year-old Emilio was pronounced dead. She was charged with second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, plus 2 counts of willful cruelty to a child. The 20-year-old pleaded not guilty, and her bail was set at more than $1 million. It's now December 8th, almost 6 months after Emilio's death, and the case is already in front of a jury.
The defendant sat inside of the lobby, in a chair, socializing, engaging in conversations, speaking to other patrons, helping another mother watch her child for over 2 hours while Emilio perished in the car, while Emilio burned from the inside out. She did not leave that building a single time between 2:05 p.m. and 4:30 to check on her sons. She chose to ignore all of her responsibilities. She ignored the fact that she had children that day. She ignored the fact that they were in the car. She spoke about her children, ladies and gentlemen. She told the other patrons in the spa that she had children. What she failed to acknowledge, what she failed to ever say, is that her children were in the car. She didn't tell anybody this information because she knew it was wrong. She knew her 2 babies should not be in the car without her in the heat. But you will hear this morning that when officers arrived, Emilio was unconscious. He was lifeless. His lips and limbs were blue. he was limp, and he was not breathing. That was his condition at the med spa before going to the hospital. Emilio was ultimately transported to the hospital, at which point officers came into contact with Mateo. Mateo was not in nearly the same condition as Emilio, but he was lethargic, he was red, and he was drenched in sweat when he was ultimately located. And it's important to recognize and remember, ladies and gentlemen, that not only were these two babies trapped in the car, they were trapped and strapped inside of their car seats. They could not leave even if they were able to. At Adventist Health Hospital, Emilio, as we discussed earlier, started receiving treatment from doctors and nurses. This is when it was determined that his temperature was 107.2 degrees. You will hear from the treating nurse, Gabrielle Long, tomorrow. She will talk to you about how Emilio presented when he arrived at the hospital. She will tell you about the temperature and how she obtained that temperature. You will hear about the significance of that temperature. You will hear from Dr. Thomas Riley, the attending physician. You will hear the length of time, the length of efforts doctors and nurses spent attempting to revive Emilio. And you will hear that he was ultimately pronounced deceased at 5:48 p.m. on June 29th, 2025. You will hear from Nurse Elizabeth Bond. She is the nurse that provided treatment to Mateo. You will hear from her that Mateo, while lethargic and sweaty, he was okay when he arrived. His temperature was 99 degrees. You will hear from her and from the coroner, in this case, Dr. Glinecki, that there is an explanation as to why Emilio and Mateo's conditions were significantly different. And that explanation, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be because of their ages, essentially. Babies around 1 year old do not have the ability to regulate their temperatures. They don't have the sweat glands that develop as we get older. When she went outside at 4:30, it still was not to check on her children. When she left that business at about 4:33 p.m., she was going to her car to get her phone to pay for her procedure. It was by happenstance at that time that she saw Emilio and Mateo and the conditions they were in. At that time, she brought Emilio into the business, flagged down Isabel Carrion, who you will hear from tomorrow. Isabel brought Mateo into the business. And you're going to hear from Shelby and Ian that they were shocked to learn that she had children with her based upon her behaviors inside of the spa. There are no accidents in this case. This isn't a case of a forgotten child whose mom was in a hurry. These were intentional actions done willfully by the defendant.
A lot of new details were revealed over the course of Maya's trial. Unfortunately, our cameras couldn't capture every moment because the judge ruled only opening statements, closing arguments, and the verdict could be filmed. But we learned from an employee at the med spa who took the stand on December 10th that Maya allegedly waited to call 911 for at least 15 minutes after finding her son in distress. According to Isabel Carrion, Maya left the building after her treatment to get her phone, just like prosecutors said during openings. After 15 minutes, Isabel went to check if Maya left without paying. She testified when she went outside, Maya was sitting in the driver's seat with her baby in her arms. Isabel testified she told Maya to take her baby into the building so a registered nurse could help, and that's when she noticed there was a second child in the back seat. Maya reportedly never mentioned the second child, nor was she acting with urgency, according to Isabel's testimony. The biggest trial bombshell, though, came on December 11th. The prosecution called the nurse who was conducting Maya's procedure that afternoon. Harmony Pacheco testified Maya was there to get a liquid BBL, not lip fillers as originally reported. Liquid BBLs are non-surgical and normally involve filler being injected to the buttocks to, make it bigger. Harmony, while on the stand, confirmed the appointment only lasted 15 to 20 minutes. After the appointment, she noticed Maya leave to get her phone to pay, and when she returned, baby Emilio was in her arms. According to Harmony's testimony, he was purple, he had foam in his mouth, but I didn't get such a great look at the child. I shouted for someone to call the ambulance, and then she went back outside. She testified she tried to cool him down by taking him to the restroom, wetting some napkins, and giving him fresh water because because he looked like he was going to pass out. Now, meanwhile, Maya's defense planned to concede involuntary manslaughter and her cruelty charges, meaning her defense admitted right off the bat she was responsible for those charges. However, they wanted to challenge second-degree murder.
On June 29th this year, Ms. Hernandez left from Visalia around noon, and she drove in her gray 2022 Toyota Corolla Hybrid, and she drove to Bakersfield to have a cosmetic procedure at 31 South Railroad. Ms. Hernandez arrives in Bakersfield at about 1:10 p.m. Prior to leaving Visalia, Ms. Hernandez and her children ate breakfast that day. The children ate fruit cups and bananas for breakfast, and later in the day for lunch, the children ate sandwiches and fruit. Throughout the morning and the day, the children had access to milk, water, and juice. Around 1:30 p.m., Ms. Hernandez went into the business to check on the status of her appointment. She returned to the car and she did text Nurse Harmony Pacheco. Pacheco was the nurse providing the procedure. Ms. Hernandez went into the business around 2 p.m. for what she thought was a 15-minute medical procedure. Before she goes into the business, she left her kids in their car seats with cookies, a bottle of milk each, and with Mateo, she left her phone so that he could watch TV. Before she went into the business, Ms. Hernandez left her keys under the seat. The car was running. The air conditioning was on. Ms. Hernandez thought that the car would stay running, that the air conditioning would likewise remain on, and that Mateo and Amelia would be okay. I want to pause for a second, because law enforcement would later determine two things. One, there's no black box information in this case, and what I mean by that is that the car's data recorder cannot provide any on-off times for the engine relevant to this case. And number two, law enforcement verifies with Toyota mechanics that the car shuts off after an hour if the shift lever stays in park, and that timer system in that car is reset if the brake pedal is depressed or if the shift lever moves, neither of which unfortunately happened in this case. Things at the business were running behind, and Ms. Hernandez stayed in the waiting room too long. And when the procedure was done, she went back out to the car and discovered that something was very wrong with Mateo and Emilio. Mateo's cheeks were red, and that's something that happens with him, according to what Ms. Hernandez will later tell law enforcement. And when Ms. Hernandez took Emilio out of his car seat, Emilio started shaking. In her own words, Ms. Hernandez starts freaking out, and she initially believes that Emilio's having a seizure because Mateo had a seizure once before, and to her it looked the same. Ms. Hernandez calls 911 twice, and in between takes Emilio inside the business to the nurse. Ms. Hernandez attempts CPR on Emilio, and 911 helps her with that, but tragically, it doesn't work. And neither do the attempts by medical personnel. Later that day, Emilio is pronounced deceased at 17:48 hours, which Ms. Hernandez learns during her first interview with law enforcement. Mateo survives, thankfully, because his sweat glands have developed. Emilio succumbs to hyperthermia because his have not. Now, you've already heard that this case involves 4 counts. I want to say at the beginning of the case, here and now, that I intend to concede the counts related to involuntary manslaughter and child endangerment that are charged in counts 2, 3, and 4 when I speak to you again near the end of the case. That doesn't relieve the DA of the burden of proof of all the counts, but the defense is challenging the second-degree murder charge in count 1, and when I speak to you again at the end of the case, I am going to ask you to find her not guilty of that charge.
When it was time to present the defense's case, Maya took the stand. She testified she packed her sons into the car and they headed to Bakersfield. Jurors heard a recording of her 911 call where she reportedly was speaking frantically with dispatchers as she attempted CPR. But during her cross-examination, prosecutors questioned her about the text messages indicating she was allowed to bring her children inside the med spa for her appointment. Prosecutors also questioned the other risks of Maya leaving 2 young babies inside a car unattended for more than 2 hours, like the risk of her car being stolen or her children choking while being left by themselves. Maya reportedly responded she didn't think of those scenarios at the time. The 20-year-old testified she thought her sons would be safe inside her car and she wasn't expecting her car to shut off while it was parked. She said she only recognized the consequences of her decisions after what happened to her sons. It's now December 16, 2025, the time for both sides to give their final message to the jury.
She knew that she had a stroller in her car that both of the boys could sit in, be strapped in, just like in their car seats, and sit in the spa. She chose none of that, ladies and gentlemen. She arrived in Bakersfield. She chose to go inside at approximately 2:04 p.m., and at that time, she chose to leave her children in the car. She sat inside that business in the same chair from 2:05 to 4:09 p.m. Did not move from the chair, ladies and gentlemen. You watched that. She didn't get up to check on her appointment time. She didn't get up to ask how much longer. She didn't get up to tell anybody she was in a hurry. She didn't get up to check on her kids. At 4:09, she goes back for her procedure, and at 4:33, she leaves the building. Even at this time, ladies and gentlemen, 4:33 p.m., she does not leave to go check on her kids. And you heard that through her interviews with detectives. She left to go get her phone to pay. Even when she left at 4:33, her children were not the priority. She did not leave to go get her children. She left to go get her money. Again, with Maya as the priority, not her children. You heard from witness Shelby Murch that she was a patron that day at the med spa. She was also waiting for her procedure. She was there approximately 30 minutes before the defendant arrived. She told you and she described for you the atmosphere in the waiting room. And you ultimately got to see the atmosphere, ladies and gentlemen, but Ms. Murch described it for you before you saw the video surveillance. And what you saw in that video surveillance perfectly matched what Ms. Murch told you. It was a friendly, welcoming, lively atmosphere. People were chatting, they were talking, there was another child. While the defendant was in the waiting room, she was bubbly and engaging in conversations with the other patrons. Bubbly and engaging in conversations with the other patrons, she told them that she had 2 little babies. She told them what her plans were for the 4th of July in a few days. What she didn't tell anybody inside of the waiting room was that her 2 little babies were actually there. What she didn't tell anybody in the waiting room was that her 2 little babies were strapped in her car. She testified, "Oh, I didn't tell them because they're strangers and I don't want to tell them about my life." But ladies and gentlemen, this is where you get to use your common sense. You know better. You know that's not why she withheld that information. She was talking to these people about getting things injected into her butt. She was talking to them about her plans. She was talking to them about the fact that she had children. Oh, but the fact that she had them with her was simply too personal? No, ladies and gentlemen. She knew that it was wrong and that it was criminal, and that if they knew, she would have a problem. That's why she didn't tell anybody her kids were with her in the car. After the defendant's procedure, the defendant left the building and went outside. Shortly after, a few minutes later, the defendant came in carrying Emilio. Emilio, who was completely limp, turning colors, his limbs just hanging. she came in and brought Emilio into the nurse's room. Shortly after that, Miss Murch saw Isabel Carrion come in with Mateo. And Shelby described to you how Mateo looked. He was gasping for air, had bubbles coming from his mouth, had peed through his diaper, sweat through his onesie, was holding an empty bottle. You also heard that he looked like he was going to have a stroke, and that when she touched him and held him, he was hot to the touch. And ladies and gentlemen, these characteristics, these observations are of the child that survived. These observations, gasping for air, bubbling mouth, hot to the touch, those are of the child that is okay. Imagine what Emilio was going through. She and Harmony took Mateo into the bathroom where they put water on him, tried to cool him down. They continued their attempts to cool him down when they brought him back out. You actually saw those attempts in the video surveillance where Shelby's holding Mateo and Harmony's patting under his clothes with the wet cloth, trying to cool him down. Then they go and rinse out his dirty milk, rotten milk probably at that time, bottle and fill it with water for him. And Shelby also told you something that was very telling, ladies and gentlemen. While the defendant was in the waiting room, she was approached and asked by another mother, the mother and grandmother combo sitting on the black couch, to watch their child while she went to the bathroom. And the defendant did. This was over an hour before, and you can see it in the video surveillance, over an hour before the defendant went into her procedure. At that time, she knew people in there were staying. They were waiting for their appointments. They were willing to help each other out. She knew she could have asked one of them, hey, if I bring my kids in here, can you watch them for the few minutes I'm in my procedure? She knew there were options. She chose not to take those options because that would have interfered with her break.
You heard testimony that they thought that she was going to run out. They thought she was going to dine and dash on the BBL. So take that for what you will. If people can read other people's nonverbal cues, it isn't that surprising that someone would be cautious, because we all send signals to each other. Some good, some bad, some friendly, some mad, etc. For the medical witnesses, Dr. Riley was the ER doc. Dr. Glenisi testified that there were no abrasions, bruises, lacerations, scars, or burn marks. We had the two nurses that testified from the ER. I'll come back to Musako down the road. Just like with the civilians in the spa, the treating medical professionals testified that they were affected. Yeah, they're human. Anyone would be. But when it's suggested to you that Dr. Riley tried everything, well, what else is he going to do? He's not going to come up here and say that he tried 3/4 to save someone. So facts and emotion, what moves the needle? Not saying the guy did a bad job at all. What I'm saying is it's okay that he is upset with this. Anyone would be. But when he comes and says, we tried everything, well, yeah, of course you did. I'm glad you did, but of course you did. So, let's move to Maya. First interview. There were 2 interviews. They were done by Detectives McNabb and Jordan. Each interview speaks for itself. You have the video. You will have the video. Maya taking accountability doesn't equal conscious disregard. Those are different concepts. Maya thought the AC would stay on. That she said that in the first interview. She didn't know the car would turn off. She left the fob under the seat. She left cookies, bottles, a fruit roll-up, an iPhone for Mateo, and she left them in car seats. That's what she testified to. She also said she never read the manual. She bought it, and she started driving it. So again, do with that what you will. You already heard the 911 call, and I hope you'll listen to it again. That call was frantic. Listen to her voice in that call. She tried to ride in the ambulance, and she was not allowed. When the DA crossed Maya, counts 2, 3, and 4 were proven. And I also said, to be fair to the DA, you know, she has to meet her burden of proof, right? That's the law. She has to meet her burden of proof, but we're conceding 2, 3, and 4. My point is, Maya was criminally negligent. That much is clear. Her behavior was absolutely more than ordinary carelessness, inattention, or mistaken judgment. She was reckless in a way that created a high risk of death, or GBI, and a reasonable person would have known that acting in that way would create such a risk. That's why this is involuntary manslaughter and child endangerment. That's exactly why it is. Maya didn't know time of death for Amelia. Maya tried to call CPR. Maya tried CPR on the 911 call with the assistance from the dispatcher. If Maya knew when she Snapchatted her sister that Amelia was dead, why ask McNabb? It's hyperbole. It's what we always engage in, right? Oh my gosh, she's dead, right? Maya asked the guards, and they didn't know. Maya's reaction was one of emotional shock per Dr. Musako. I had to do that. I had to call him to get his opinion on that. But is that really surprising? I'm not trying to deminimize my own expert, but I don't just get to say stuff. I have to give you a basis. That'd be like the recreation. I have to say, hey, this is an expert. These are the tests that he performed. This is his opinion on this case. The point here is that Maya did everything right as soon as she could.
The jury had a huge task. They would be the ones deciding, is Maya guilty of what she's been charged with? Is she not guilty? When the verdict was delivered, the jury's decision left a lot of people stunned.
We feel that further deliberation would be pointless. Is that accurate?
Yes.
For the group, is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes. Everyone's indicating yes. Okay, so I'm going to ask each one of you the same question. It's actually multiple questions in one. If any of these things you believe would be helpful, let me know. Pardon me? Yes. Is there anything further? I'm just asking juror number 1 right now. We'll go down the line all the way. Is there anything further closing argument on a specific issue from the attorneys? Any clarification of the law by me? Any questions that you have of the court that you think would be of assistance in reaching a unanimous verdict? 2? No. 3? No. 4? No. 5? No. 6? 7?
No.
8?
No.
9?
No.
10?
No.
11? 12? Counsel satisfied?
Yes.
You have reached a verdict as to counts 3 and 4. Is that accurate?
Yes.
You hand the verdict form to our bailiff, and we'll take the verdict on those 2 counts.
The people of the state of California versus Maya Hernandez, case BF 205702A, verdict. Bakersfield, California, December 18, 2025. Third count. We, the jury, impaneled to try the above entitled case, find the defendant, Maya Hernandez, guilty of child abuse likely to produce great bodily harm or death of Amelia G. in violation of Section 273A, paren A of the Penal Code as charged in the third count of the information. Signed, foreperson. Finding on Penal Code Section 12022.95, death of a child. We, the jury, impaneled to try the above entitled case, find it to be true that Amelia G. died as a result of the crime charged in count 3. Signed, foreperson. Fourth count. We, the jury, impaneled to try the above entitled case, find the defendant, Maya Hernandez, guilty of child abuse likely to produce great bodily harm or death of Mateo G. in violation of Section 273A, paren A of the Penal Code as charged in the fourth count of the information. Signed, foreperson.
It's unclear if prosecutors will retry Maya on counts 1 and 2, those charges being second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. That decision should be revealed on January 12th, when attorneys on both sides meet for a status hearing. Maya Hernandez still faces sentencing for the child endangerment convictions. Those charges reportedly carry a sentence of up to 6 years in prison. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Inside the Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.